Did you celebrate it? Or does this come and go? Yeah, no, I did. I celebrated it. I mowed my lawn. I mowed my lawn on Friday. Now, that to you seems like petty, but ask my wife, that's a big deal. Because I mow my lawn about every 6 weeks, give or take. Now, what I do with mowing my lawn, see, we don't have a lawnmower. And the reason we don't have a lawnmower is because for the first year we were here, I had a gardener because we just didn't want to deal with the hassle of buying things. Then it was too expensive, so we canceled the gardener, but we still didn't have a lawnmower. And I thought, by this point, the drought is kicking in, and so, well, we have grass here a year from now, so why invest hundreds of dollars in a lawnmower when there's going to be no grass likely come July? So we have held off, and the Lord has provided for us. We have some great neighbors, Lee and Bridget Cooper, who I will just text every so often, hey, can I borrow your lawnmower? And he lets me borrow his lawnmower. So Friday, we celebrated Earth Day, and I trimmed the edges of my lawn, and I mowed it, and I blew all the debris into the street. No, I collected it all, so the neighbors can have that. But celebration of Earth Day. Now, I'm guessing that you don't really care a whole lot about my yard, right? Maybe my neighbors do a little bit because they have to look at it sometimes. But for the most part, you don't care very much about my yard. So that story really was sort of like, thanks, Tim, for that, but I can move on from here. But when we talk about the yard that we live on, you know, the rainforest and the grass hills over in San Luis Obispo and stuff, and even your beach area with your big swimming pool out there, that's the kind of yard you think about a bit more, and you care a bit more about, that it's kept up and that it actually has a nice place for you to go. You never like it when your oceans are shut down because of pollution or some kind of problem. You don't like it when there's a fire on the hills over here and you can't go mountain bike riding because it's too hot. I mean, you don't care much about my yard, but you care a lot about just the yard, don't you, this earth? And we all do, right? And that's why Earth Day was started. 1970, it kicked off, and the idea that all of this focus has been on the development of, you know, man's ingenuity, and we're leaving a big carbon spots, and so let's observe Earth Day and bring people's awareness, and then it's a national day now. And now, for some of us, this conversation is a little polarizing, because some of you have some pretty strong opinions about it. Polarizing both in political arenas. In fact, it's become very political. It's become a major drum on different parties and the sides you take. It's become very polarizing there, lots of emotion. But it's also become polarizing in the church. And within the church itself, I mean, we find that there's different positions on this topic, and the positions themselves aren't neutral, sort of like, do you like cherry ice cream or vanilla ice cream? It's more, there's more emotions attached to it than that, right? And let me tell you why I think there's a lot of emotion to the conversation when we talk about the care of the earth, care of the planet, because deep down, when we talk about our identity, we talk about kind of who I am and my security, there's a sense of home that's attached to that. There's a sense of home. And this world, we have a kinship. No matter where you live, there's a kinship we have to this planet. And so we have deep emotions. And so some of our deepest hopes are wrapped up in this planet as well. And this actually brings us to a good spot, because it's interesting that Paul, in our conversation in Romans, chooses in the passages, in the 25 verses in which he's unpacking the hope that you and I have, the incredible deep hope we're calling it, that you and I have because of the gospel. He has a section here to help us understand a bit about creation. 3 verses, 19, 20, actually 4, 19, 20, 21, 22 of chapter 8. And he lays out for us not just that creation has a hope, which we hit on last week, but he has a conversation with us about what is going on right now. When we look at the world, what's taking place right now? And that's helpful to really keep in mind and think about, because it helps us understand how we're to relate to it. Because again, there's two sides of the coin. There's different polar opposites in terms of people's perspectives on it, but it helps us to really look at what the scriptures say. So if you haven't already done so, you pull out your bulletins and pull out those little worksheets and open your Bible to Romans chapter 8. Because what I want to do with you this morning is I want to tease our way through these 4 verses in chapter 8, recognizing the bigger conversation that we are talking about. We are unpacking the hope that you and I have. And we spent 2 weeks already talking about our identity, and last week about the suffering of this world that we experience and the hope that we have to come. Well, this week I want to get more down to the nitty-gritty of how we relate to a planet that seems to be in agony, and how we relate to an earth that seems to be always on the brink of the next disaster. How do we relate to this? What should we do? Should we jump on board and get involved in planet Earth? Or should we kind of, as many choose to do, step back and say, I have no involvement at all? How does God want us to operate in this world? And Verses 19 to 22 help us get a feel for that. So what I want to do with you this morning is I want to give you three truths, because you can't really make application without understanding the truths. Three truths that I believe everyone in this room really just needs to embrace and adopt, and then give you my applications from those truths as I see the logical step being. So let's start in verse 19. Now, to understand verse 19, you've got to look at verse 18 quickly, though, because it ends, so it talks about the comparative glory that is to come, uncomparative glory is to come. It says, that is to be revealed to us. Verse 19 onward starts talking about what is that revealing going to look like and be. Verse 19, for the creation waits. He does it kind of in an odd way, but waits with eager longing for the revelation or the revealing of the sons of God. Now, why is it waiting for the sons of God to be revealed? Well, because the creation was subjected to futility. Not willing, but because of him. That should be a capital H there. That is God who subjected it. But he subjected it in hope. Now, what's the creation hoping for? Verse 21, that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So what's the earth like right now? It's in bondage. He kind of personifies this now with verse 22. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth up until now. Now, we're going to unpack three truths, but we have to kind of start from the top and work our way through this. Because when we start from this text, there's a lot going on here about the earth's present condition, but we have to start from the very beginning. The first three words become very, very important. For the creation. We have to start there, because it implies that there's a creator behind this creation. And that creator wasn't some lonely being in some off-distance, never perceived place somewhere, just wondering what to do and thought, maybe I'll create something. It wasn't lonely, it wasn't distracted, it wasn't angry. I mean, the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He was a joyful God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, eternally existing together in perfect relationship, enjoying each other. Out of the overflow of their hearts, overflow of who they were, they created all that we see. So let's start here and then unpack this truth for us, but we need to start with this truth. God delights in his creation. God delights in his creation because it wasn't made out of frustration or loneliness. It was made out of the overflow of the joy of God. And we see that everywhere we look. When we see the joy of the Lord, and that's why you have joy as you look at it. Now, let me just tease this out a little bit for you and have you just think through the biblical context. Think about Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created, and it goes through a whole list, 6 days, whatnot, and on each day, here's a powerful statement. And there was evening, and there was morning on the blank day. Think about this. God spent an entire day enjoying that part of his creation. God created the sun, moon, and stars, and he spent an entire day, evening to morning, enjoying sun, moon, and stars. He separated the land from the seas. There's no vegetation or animals on the land. There's no fish in the sea yet, just water and earth. And God sat back for a day and enjoyed. Took delight in the land. Took delight in the sea. And then he created vegetation on the land. Trees, and he took delight in his creation of the trees and vegetation. Then he created fish in the sea. Birds in the air. He took delight in the birds and in the fish for a whole day. He just enjoyed himself at his creation. And then he made the animals to walk the earth, and he enjoyed the animals. All of this enjoyment before you were made. Imagine that. Sometimes as a kid, I wonder how my parents enjoyed life before I was born. Believe me, they did, and God did too. All before you were made, God had great joy and great delight in what he had made. I mean, the text indicates that. But it's not just what he made that he enjoyed. He enjoyed the process of what he made. He enjoyed the process of making it. And I know that because whenever somebody enjoys what they're doing in making something, you see really skilled engineers and really skilled artists add a couple of elements into their work. And that is, next slide, creative detail and hidden mystery. I mean, the really good ones add the hidden mystery, but those who are really into their work always add a lot of creative detail. They get really down to the nitty-gritty, a little bit more. This might be fun here. They spend time with it. And we see all kinds of creative detail in the world. And we see all kinds of hidden mystery in the world. Let's start with creative detail. Here's just a few things that I Googled and said, okay, let's just find out how creative God was. And so I did some Google searching, and here's what I came up with. Did you know, and I'm kind of sad to tell you about this number because I wish there wasn't so many, but there's 350,000 species of beetles in the world. 350,000 species of beetles. As you hear this list, you'll notice that a lot of them are animals you don't care about much. I find that those I really want God to have created more of, he kind of limits to maybe 1,000 species of dogs or 200, and then there's 350,000 species of beetles, right? Here's another one, 160,000 species of moths. There's only like 1,000 species of butterfly. I wish he had reversed that. But that's a lot of moths. It's a lot of details and switching them around, and we'll try this shade and this color. We'll do this wing type and that ear eye type, and we'll make them blind. We'll make them seeing. You name it. It's a lot of detail to add to the world. There's 2,000 species of starfish. How about that one? I mean, starfish don't do a whole lot, right? I'm going to make 2,000 kinds of starfish, and they're just going to sit there and suck the top of a rock. I'm sure they do more than that, but I just look at them thinking, one species would have sufficed on this one. I mean, other ones you could have gotten a bit more creative, but starfish, there's a starfish, right? I mean, but there's 2,000 species of starfish. There's 40,000, and you arachnophobes are going to hate this, species of spiders. 40,000 species of spiders. You're never going to kill them all, but that's what that means. You'll never get rid of spiders in your house or ever, anywhere. It's a bit disturbing. But, I mean, that's incredible detail, right? Have you ever looked at a spider, like under a microscope, or just, there's an incredible amount going on in that little tiny space. An incredible amount going on. And then those spiders are some are poisonous, some are not, some have big bodies, some have there's no body, just all head. And then these massive legs. Just amazing, the detail that he put into this creation. And talk about detail, I mean, you know this already, but no two fingerprints are alike, right? Of all the billions of people on planet Earth now and all who have ever lived, there's never been one redundancy in fingerprints. Never has there been a redundancy in tree either. There's all different kinds of trees throughout the world, but you take a redwood and you've never had one redwood grow the same way as another one did. It's all new. Now you and I call that random. God calls it detail. Because of this, God is the master creator, always doing original work. He is the master creator, and all of his work is original. Now, I don't mean to say that God made the world original. There's never, he didn't steal anybody's idea. I'm saying that tomorrow, when my flowers, hopefully they continue this, bud on my hillside of my backyard, that flower is original. It looks like the other one to me, but it is entirely unique. And God made that one unique. Before I formed you in the womb for people, I knew you, right? I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. What does that mean? It means there's no two people who are alike. No two flowers that are alike. No two bugs that are alike. No two trees that are alike. There is no two of anything. Everything in this world is a unique creation of God. He is still creating and still taking great delight in all that he's making. There is incredible detail. And you put detail into a process that you enjoy doing. God has not gotten bored of being the creator yet. He hasn't gotten bored of being creator yet. So there's the creative detail, but then there's also the hidden mystery. And I like to say the hidden mystery really is about discovery. We discover this hidden mystery of God. And I can go on, hours talking about all the mysteries that this world that are hidden, at least that we found, and many more to come. But let me just give you two. If you were anybody living before the late 19th century and you had to go in for some kind of operation or go in for some kind of amputation, you name it, you would be given a stick to bite on, people to hold you down, right? And a little bit of vodka maybe, just to kind of kill the brain cells so you don't feel the pain as much. There was no anesthetics going on. No anesthetics. That was your anesthetics was you knock the person out, you hold them down. In fact, if you walk into a museum of naval history, you're liable to find a picture of crewmen holding down people onto some kind of table while the physician pulls out his instrument, hence an axe or a knife, to cut off somebody's arm. Guys, I'm so glad that in the late 19th century, somebody discovered all the elements God put in there to create anesthesia, because I had a surgery a while ago, and I slept like a baby through it. I don't remember a thing. In fact, I had dreams, and they were good dreams during it all. I woke up. I had some pain, but guess what they did? Here's some painkillers. I was comfortable mostly throughout the time, even in my healing, because somebody found hidden in the creation of God medicinal things that actually take care of the pain. Before the late 19th century, that didn't exist, but then we found it because God hid these mysteries in his creation for us to discover. And for thousands of years, he knew it was there, but let humanity find it. Then we fast forward, there's a lot going on between these two dates, but 1961, the Russians are the first one to do this, and they launched an astronaut into space. First time somebody beheld the globe, saw the continents and the ocean and the systems of the weather patterns, and in its huge, majestic glory, right? Never had that been seen except by God himself. He just enjoyed the globe from that distance, enjoyed it up close. Our world is full. We're still discovering species. We're discovering parts of our planet that we've lived on for so long. Mount Everest was like 1919. Somebody got to the top of Everest. We're still finding how our body works. Hidden mystery throughout. This is a creator who loves what he does. Just like any good mystery novel, you're always reading it back over multiple times because the second and third and fourth time you're finding new things. How many generations have gone by and we're still finding new things to this creation because the Creator took great delight in what he is doing and the process by which he did it, and he puts hidden mystery and tons of detail. Oh yes, God enjoys being the Creator, and he enjoys his creation. In fact, Psalm 104 is one of those songs that was written reflecting the heart of God as he sings, we might say, over creation. Here's a couple of sentences from it. God lays the beams of his chambers on the waters. He makes the clouds his chariots. That's kind of a beautiful picture. I just the thought of getting in a chariot, you couples for a romance time, it's a meaningful experience, or even a warrior in a chariot. That was a place of strength and honor. And God lays the beams of his chambers on the waters, and he makes the clouds his chariots. You, that is God, makes springs gush forth in the valley. Oh, see, I thought it was because there was water there. No, God's causing the water to gush up and create rivers and springs. Next one. You cause the grass to grow for the livestock. I hope he causes the grass to grow for my yard this year. That'd be really nice. You cause the grass to grow for the livestock, and here is the great sea. This is verse 25. Great and wide, which teems with creatures innumerable, which speaks to the creative design and the hidden mystery, because there are so many creatures that we cannot even count, and we still don't even know how many there are. We're still finding them out. Verse 31 of Psalm 104 really is the crescendo point to all that is going on behind everything else that is said, and it says this: may the Lord rejoice in his works. And that's not a statement about telling God you need to rejoice in what you've made. It's a statement telling us what God does with his creation. He rejoices over it. He takes great delight in not only what he made, but what he's making, because he has not stopped being the creator. We have to start there. We have to start there, that God takes delight in his creation. Because when we think about it, we never want to reduce it down to simply something to be thrown away. But we also got to protect ourselves from the other side of the coin, and that is to misrepresent or misunderstand the relationship that God has established in this. So we got to understand that. And Romans chapter 8 touches on this. Verse 19, if you're still there, hopefully. For the creation, we hit on creation, waits with eager longing. Circle the word "for" if you're a Bible marker. I circled mine. For the revealing of the sons of God. Now you're saying, what does that mean? Creation is not waiting for its liberation. It's waiting for your liberation. It's waiting for something for you. not for something for it. Now, it'll share in what you receive, as the text says, but it's waiting for your liberation. In fact, verse 21 says, and the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of, here is, the glory of the children of God. It'll attain your freedom. It'll share in your freedom because your wagons are hitched together. And it's because of that, because God, back in Genesis, the very beginning, chapter 1, verse 26, said these words, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. That is God speaking. And let them have dominion. That's rulership over all the earth. He says, be fruitful and multiply. Here's what dominion looks like. Be fruitful and multiply. Spread out. Have babies. Expand. Multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, which is a statement of subjection. When you subdue something, it's sort of like you brothers. When you wrestled, one subdued the other. How? By pinning them to the floor. And they cry uncle or whatnot, right? You put them into subjection. There is a servitude. You're the master. This is serve you. And you bring that servitude to it. Fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over every living thing. See, the creation has hitched its wagon. God has hitched the wagon of creation, I say, to our steam engine. And so it's awaiting as any good servant does. A good servant rejoices in his master's joy. And the creation rejoices in its master's joy, and God has put us over it. Number two, here's a second truth that we have to make sure we're balancing out. God gave people dominion over creation. He delights in it, and he gave people dominion over it, rulership over it. Creation is our servants, not vice versa. Let me just unpack this with a few examples. Trees, you know those in your backyard? Trees exist to be climbed on. They exist to be cut down for your home and for ships to be built, for your furniture. I mean, people came to the United States because they cut down trees, they built ships, and guess what? Creation was glorified because it helped create people discovering the planet, the places that God has given to it. Those squirrels in your backyard, we have a couple squirrels in the backyard, they're happy to be there. They don't need their own house. They're happy to take the tree that you plant. They're happy to move. If you want to build a house there, they'll find another tree next door. Squirrels are happy to let you have the house, the area, and the tree. The horses, they love to be ridden. The glory of a horse is to be ridden. To take a horse and domesticate it is not unjust. It's not unjust. It's the glory of the horse to be ridden by somebody and trotted around and be useful. I mean, look at the Old Testament, the way animals are used, the ox to pull things. That is not an abuse necessarily. We can talk about abuse, but that's not abuse because the ox is doing work for somebody or carrying something around. The creation was made to be our servant, not us is. And this is important because if we forget this, then we start talking in terms of like Mother Earth. And what I mean by that is Romans 25 defines it. We exchange the truth of God for a lie, and we worship and serve the creation rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. This is an important truth to remember. God has given humanity dominion over his creation. And if we forget that, we are liable to make earth our master as opposed to us, its steward, its ruler, we might say. Now, here's a good picture for you. Matthew 21, it's on the screen. But Matthew 21, Jesus is approaching Jerusalem. He's heading for his crucifixion. And he gets hungry. Obviously, he was very much man, very much God. But it says this, in the morning as Jesus was returning to the city, he became hungry. Don't know why, but he just maybe fasted all night. And seeing a fig tree off on the side, he went over to it, but found no fruit, only leaves, meaning that it was in season for fruit, but there was no fruit on it. So he says, maybe the next time I'll come by and you'll have something for me. Is that what he said? No, this is what he said. May no fruit ever come from you again. May no fruit ever come from you again. And the fig tree withered at once. Now this is Jesus, right? I mean, the one who is love. This seems a bit, in some of our hearts and minds, that's a bit unethical. That's just unjust. I mean, that's just harsh. Why don't we just give it a few more months and see what happens? But Jesus, and I'm not saying we got to do this to everyone, he's making a point. Using an example here to talk about a nation and people, but feels very free to curse a tree because he is its master and it didn't have the fruit that he required at the time in his hunger, so it didn't serve the purpose it was made for. And so he said, may no one bear fruit from you again. Now, I realize that sounds harsh to some of us and some of our ears, but I want you just to understand that that tree was there for him, not him for that tree, right? Not vice versa. Now, to have dominion over something means that there's a rulership, but it also means this. It means that your destinies are attached. So next slide, as humanity goes, creation goes. As humanity goes, creation goes. So Genesis 3 touched on this. Humanity sinned. Humanity rejected its creator. And so God not only kicked them out of the garden, but he cursed the ground. It shared in humanity's judgment. And that's what we're reading about right here, actually. God subjected to futility, right? These are what we're reading about here. Futility, corruption. God subjected it because it shared in our judgments. Whose fault was it? It was Adam's. It was. Adam, raise your hand. It was my fault. And this earth is going to suffer for it. Yep, that's what's going to happen. It shares in your judgment, shares in your joy, shares in everything because it is your servant. It takes delight in serving you. Now, here's a few examples. Turn to Genesis chapter 6. Let me just try to biblically show you that the scriptures show this to be the case, that as the humanity goes, creation goes. Genesis chapter 6. Now, this is the story of Noah and the flood. Better say that the account of Noah and the flood. And here's God describing, or the text describing the condition of the world, starting in verse 5. The Lord saw the wickedness of man, that it was great on the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land. Now, he's going to expand on this. This includes man and animals and creeping things. That means those bugs, of which there's 350,000 species of. And birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. Who sinned? Who's the problem here? Man, his evil, right? Who's now sharing in the judgment? We know the story. They all die. Well, minus a few remnant, 2 of each kind in the ark of Noah, right? Because as humanity goes, creation goes. It shares in its judgment. If Adam and Eve had not sinned, then creation would not have been cursed. But that is the connection there. Isaiah chapter 24 is another great text to kind of make this point. The earth lies defiled under its inhabitants. Defiled under its inhabitants. Why? Because they transgress the laws. They disobey the Lord. They are walking in disobedience. And so the picture is almost like this. You're walking around and you're saying, God, forget you. I don't like you. And there's dripping pollution onto the ground. Let's call it oil, because we all hate oil on the ground. You got to clean that, right? We're dripping oil of pollution on the ground. Is defiling it. Numbers 33 that I've written in your notes there is a great place. It says bloodshed is polluting the earth. The earth is defiled and polluted. Now, I get pollution when I look at this outside at times. I see the smog, right? And I know that cigarettes pollute the lungs and it pollutes the earth. And I know that carbon from the cars or the emissions from the cars pollute the atmosphere. And then there are all these things like oil in the ocean pollutes I get the pollution there. I just don't always make myself aware of the pollution of the sin of my life. But God says, when you sin against me, you're polluting the land. The land shares in your disobedience and becomes defiled. As humanity goes, creation goes. The earth shares in humanity's choices and in its disciplines from the Lord. Now, these are just truths, okay? We have God delights greatly in it, but we also have to understand the relationship he has built in between humanity and creation and how that is to be stewarded. We have one more because we have to then understand as we talk about this in Genesis 3 and how God attached the wagons, we might say, to ours. Romans chapter 8 picks up on what that means for creation and the condition that it's in right now. Here's the condition that we have to accept about our creation. Starting in verse 20. For the creation was subjected to futility, vanity. Doesn't work right. Oh man, if only it worked right, right? If only you put a seed in the ground and it produced a plant every time. If only you water your grass and there's no disease and you don't get crabgrass or the weeds that grow up with it. You just keep it the way you want it. If only hurricanes didn't come and wipe out the city after it was rebuilt from the last hurricane, the flooding and the flood waters come up. If only that didn't happen. If only creation actually cooperated. Subjected to futility, but more than that. Draw a line down from that to verse 21. The creation itself was set free from its, here is bondage to corruption. Corruption, decay, ruin. It implies the ultimate end of a corrupted thing, a corroding thing, a ruined thing is death. Subjected to it ultimately being terminal, and then the result Paul personifies its experience in verse 22 and says, "For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together with the pain in the pains of childbirth until now." Why is it groaning? Who subjected it? Who caused it to start be in bondage to corruption? It wasn't people. You and I sinned, but God made the choice to curse the ground. God did that. God subjected it to bondage, to futility, and it's groaning because of his subjection. Number 3, here's a third truth. We have to understand that creation is unavoidably terminal. It's unavoidably terminal. Just like you and I are terminal. We're terminal. You could do all kinds of things to your world to make it better. You could eat right or you could eat bad. But both those people are going to die. You could exercise or be lazy. But both, it's unavoidably terminal. We could save the planet with all the best things, or we can try to hell in a handbasket. But it's still going to be terminal. We got to cope with that. Got to be aware of that. And we talk about climate change, and we talk about, all the heating, climate warming. Well, it's going to get really hot. 2 Peter chapter 3 puts it like this: the heavens and earth that now exist are stored up for fire. It's going to be a hot day, being kept until the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. So he's sharing in the judgment of people, right? Then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved. And the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. And verse 13 says, but according to his, that is God's promise, we are waiting. Here's the promise. Here's the hope part. We are waiting for a new heaven and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. We are waiting for a new heaven and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. So here's the question for you then. Do we then just seek to kill and help our earth die quicker? Is that what we do? No. My grandfather, I've been blessed to have my grandparents for so many years. It's amazing that I'm turning 40 and I can still say I have 2 grandparents and I've lived life knowing them really well. It's just fun to say that, fun to know them. But they're both 90. My grandma and grandfather are 90 years old and their bodies are deteriorating significantly. My dad has been called out for emergencies many times to their house because, fall or even some pneumonia and whatnot. Let me ask you this. The fact that they're probably not going to be here next year. I mean, maybe they will, but we're just thanking God for each month that they have at this point. We're not even buying unripe fruit, right? Because who knows if it'll get to being eaten, right? The fact that you just don't know, that they're unavoidably terminal, and you can see it down the road right there, does that mean then, well, let's go kick you down the stairs, help you out a little bit? Is that what you do? You're saying, well, goodness, Tim, no. Absolutely not. What do? Well, you try to make them comfortable in the process. You remind them of their purpose and keep their purpose alive, because as long as they're alive, they have a purpose, and God has them here for that, right? Engaged. They're terminal, so are you and I. We just don't know the date, right? So what do we do with you? Do we kick you down the stairs? Well, no. Do we pour oil down our drains? Do we dump the oceans with oil? Do we try to just increase the temperature of the earth and kill everything off because then God will come back faster? I mean, I heard a pastor one time say, I know the world's going to burn. I know that God will do it. So I drive an SUV. I thought that's just the wrong attitude to have. Drive an SUV if you like, but don't make it because you're trying to spite somebody, right? It's the wrong attitude to drive one. Does it mean we kick it down? No, it doesn't mean that. It means we steward it. We care for it. Because here's the summary statement of all of what God has done. It's this. God made it. God sustains it. God cursed it. That was God who did that. God will destroy it. And God will remake it. Now, the only one on that list that you and I have any sort of semblance of partnership on is the second one. You and I sustain. We have a stewardship of things here. A stewardship. Your activity impacts what we see around us. And when God said, work the earth and keep it, there was a partnership in that sustaining, but don't think that it was then usurping God's ultimate control. God made it, and guess what? He sustains it even before the fall and after the fall. And he's the one who cursed it. And he's the one who will destroy it. And he's the one who will remake it, right? So we have three truths here. We have the truth that God takes great delight in his earth that he made, the creation he made. We have the truth that God put man in dominion over it. We have the truth that this creation is terminal, unavoidably so. So what do we do? How do we operate? Let me give you two suggestions, two thoughts. The first, we need to steward the creation so that it can better evangelize. Because the heavens declare the glory of God. The earth displays the work of his hands. That's evangelistic work. That is making known to people the glory of who God is. The earth is actually doing evangelistic work. And if we just make the earth into a garbage dump, we're hiding, we're muffling, we're silencing its voice. We know when I moved here, I didn't realize just how much I loved the area until I looked up at the sky and saw how many stars there were. You can see so many stars from Thousand Oaks. It's such a great place to live. I mean, I lived in smoggy Orange County. There was just cars everywhere, and there was smog everywhere. I mean, I never saw maybe just more than 2 or 3 stars at night with the moon, and that was a glorious night. And so I didn't look up very much because you want to see anything. But man, when I walk outside now, I look up all the time. I love to see the stars. And every time I see the stars, there's just kind of a calm, a little bit of small song of worship that goes on because they're declaring to me the glory of who God is. Now, so what do? Well, Lord, I want my children to look up to heaven. I want people to look up to heaven and see your glory displayed. I want them to get a unverbal testimony from the creation about who you are because it's declaring you. So why would I want to cover that up? So we steward the creation so that it can better evangelize. Not to save the earth, that's God's job. He'll save the earth. That's his job. Our job is to go and make disciples. Our job is to seek and save the lost. And I want to use the creation's benefits that they bring to the table, stewardship, and say, let's maximize your opportunities. Let's maximize what you bring to this game because I want people to know you. And they're not going to be able to see your glory and how good you are on a regular basis if we just throw it to waste. So let's steward it well. Let's steward the creation, keeping in mind whose it is. And here's the purpose, so it better evangelizes. Now, this is where I just say this. Doesn't mean that you have to get on every mantra, every campaign that goes around. Steward your plot of land you've been given. I mean, gosh, don't waste water, right? If you can, don't waste water. Think of creative ways to conserve water. Why? Because I realize that it impacts what goes on, right? I'm not just going to say, it's going to burn anyways. I'm going to fill up my pool, and I'm going to create more grass and water it 15 times a week, and I'm rich after all, so I can afford the bill. What are you doing? I want creation to declare the glory of God, and so I'm not going to let my greed, my pride, or my selfishness get in the way of that, because that's a sin issue, and that's a hard issue before the Lord. So let's steward it well. Let's be mindful. Not feel like we have to save everything, but let's steward the environments that God has given to us so that this earth better declares his glory. But secondly, and go and find God's children. Hey, here's the way I got this one. If creation is waiting for God's children to be revealed, if it's waiting for that day, waiting for when they're going to be shown, because we're still going, I think you're a Christian, I think I know who they are, but I'm still waiting for that day when God reveals them. Well, if that's what they're waiting for, why don't we get out there and go find them? Why aren't we taking creation's cue and its joy and hope and getting out there and finding God's children? Jesus said, I came not to save planet, but to seek and save the lost. because I realize that if you save as humanity goes, creation goes, right? And that's what we see in the scriptures. The Great Commission is not want to go out and save the planet. It's first and foremost to go out and make disciples of me, because they're going to worship me, and people who worship the Creator understand his joy in the creation, and they're at least going to live a little bit better on it. Acts of worship before them as they take showers and as they eat their food and as they water their lawns. Not in spite of any government, because you're not living for the government. Not in spite of any political agenda. You're not living for political agenda. You're doing it in glory for the Lord, right? So steward it, and let's get busy finding people. Finding God's children. You know, you've all been sick before. I've been sick multiple times, but here's what I like to do when I get sick. I like to figure out the problem, and I like to make myself comfortable. I like to go and I like to get myself the medication that needs to deal with the virus or the injury or whatnot, and then I like to keep myself comfortable along the way. Well, the problem with the world is sin. That's the issue. The problem with the world is that it's those who have been given dominion over it have rejected its creator. That's the problem. And along the way, though, as we're going out there and we're finding children of God and bringing them back to right worship with him, and as we are walking in alignment with in fellowship with God, right, we want to look at this earth and say, you know what, it'd be really good to kind of keep you comfortable and make sure your purpose is clearly seen by people as we go around. So that's what I'm calling us, and that's why our mission as the church has to remain connecting people to Jesus. It has to remain that. It has to always be about that, because we want to see people come in right worship and honor of our Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Hey, I want to have you stand here, because we're going to sing a song as the band comes forward that I think is a fitting song for this topic, and it's the song, I Exalt Thee. It's an oldie but goodie. If you've been in the church for any length of time, then you know it. If you don't know it, you'll learn it really quickly. But it says, for thou, O Lord, art high above all the earth. Thou art exalted above all gods. And then it says, we exalt thee, we exalt thee, we exalt thee. And we're going to start with that this morning. Can we dim the lights in here? And I just encourage you to enjoy your Creator as we sing these words. Father, thank you for how you have blessed us with such a beautiful environment that you have given us to understand better your glory and who you are. And I pray that we would be people who look upon it and celebrate you by our actions, celebrate you as the Creator. So your people say, amen.